teams met in Atlanta with something to prove as the college football weekend Blitz kicked off. Georgia State looking to prove that they were worthy of an FCS place in the Sun Belt Conference, while South Carolina State was trying to prove that they were ready to get back amongst the MEAC's elite. I'm Mark Gray, and we found out that South Carolina State is certainly going to be a tough out as the HBCU Sports Nation kicks off from Atlanta.
The AT&T Nations Football Classic returns to Washington, D.C. this Labor Day weekend. Events kick off August 30th and includes the rematch between Morehouse College and Howard University at RFK Stadium on September 1st. Kickoff at 3:30. Visit nationsfootballclassic.com for a full list of events and to purchase tickets. Sponsored by AT&T, Pepsi, and produced by Events DC.
Anticipation was high inside the Georgia Dome as the Georgia State Panthers began their final season and their only season in the CAA. However, it was South Carolina State who proved that they were the big dog in this fight. Opening drive, Richard Q connects with Leonard Elmore, and who says it's all about the ground and pound in Orangeburg? 72 yards later, the Bulldogs were on top 7-0, and they wouldn't look back. After a 36-yard field goal by Matt Ehas, made it 7-3. Just before the end of the first half, Georgia State with an obvious brain cramp. They turn the ball over, and South Carolina State will capitalize. Tyler McDonald takes a 22-yard pass from Richard Q, and he niftily makes his way into the end zone, and it's on from there. 14-3 at the intermission. Georgia State comes out. Ehas again with a 25-yard field goal, and then Q to McDonald. Once again, this time a 13-yard pass, and it was all but over at 21-6. A little bit later on in the contest, there were two more Nick Belcher field goals of 21 and 26 yards, and then talk about pouring salt into the wound. Dominic Mitchell, a 68-yard fumble recovery that he takes it to the house. The proverbial house call all but ends it as South Carolina State rolls to a 33-6 victory over Georgia State in what they hope sets the tone going into the conference schedule next week.
The 14th annual John Merritt Classic Weekend jumps off strong Labor Day weekend, August 31st and September 1st. Get your weekend started at the Back to the Bridge Mixer on Friday night. And a classic R&B concert at Jazz and Joe with R&B legend Freddie Jackson. Saturday afternoon starting at 2 p.m. Eat and toast at our Tiger Town tailgate. And then at 6 p.m. TSU versus FAMU. The Tigers and Rattlers will battle it out in the decades-long rivalry. Keep up with the classic online at merrittclassic.com and on Facebook and Twitter /Merritt Classic. It's showtime.
Along with Mike Walker, this was a very interesting performance because both of these teams thought that, well, they had things to prove. South Carolina State, that they were amongst the elite in the MEAC. Georgia State proving that they are worthy of a place in Division I FBS, moving to the Sun Belt Conference. And this was a good old-fashioned whipping. So do you think it was more about a bad performance by Georgia State or the dominance of South Carolina State?
I think it was kind of a 50-50 type of a situation. South Carolina State did a tremendous job offensively and defensively throughout the entire game. Tremendous performance by quarterback Richard Q. 19 for 29, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 300 yards passing. Great job by him. Great job by the defense overall. Georgia State, however, they pretty much struggled throughout the entire game. Couldn't really get anything generated offensively, and the good showing that they showed on defense, they couldn't sustain throughout the entire game.
When you consider that 300 yards passing was 12 yards better than Georgia State's total offense, even if you take away the 74 yards rushing that Q had, he was still a more balanced offensive weapon than the entire Panthers attack. So when you look at South Carolina State, they're now getting ready to take on a Bethune-Cookman team, and we thought that this was going to be a get back to the old school ground and pound ways of the Bulldogs. Who knew we were going to be talking about Air Orangeburg come next week in that part of South Carolina?
Generally, any Buddy Pugh offense is driven by the run first, the pass second. But clearly, South Carolina State took what the Georgia State defense gave him. And there were some passing opportunities. Richard Q seized the opportunity, did a tremendous job again. I think that the offense is clicking at the right time, and they need that type of success if they want to beat a Bethune-Cookman team.
And we have to give credit where credit is due. Richard Q was not a quarterback that was touted. He wasn't mentioned amongst the likes of Greg McGee or Damian Fleming in preseason. But if he can efficiently move the ball with his arm and take advantage of the very talented skill players that South Carolina State has, I think this offense is going to go from ground and pound to somewhat dynamic.
I think they have enough weapons where they don't have to really rely on him to win the game for him. He just has to manage the game, and I think he did a great job. He made a lot of good decisions, couple of errors, couple of interceptions, but nonetheless, he showed some leadership, some experience, and it paid off for South Carolina State.
So South Carolina State improves to 1-0 on the young season, and they'll face a tall order at home next week when they take on Bethune-Cookman, a team who comes into the season with a chip on their own shoulders, having not been allowed to compete in last year's FCS subdivision playoffs. For Mike Walker, I'm Mark Gray from the floor of the Georgia Dome. The HBCU rolls on next time from Nashville.